Welcome to The Cynical Developer, the podcast that helps you to improve your development knowledge and career through explaining the latest and greatest in development technology and providing you with what you need to succeed as a developer. We've recently launched our Patreon page, which can be found at cynicaldeveloper.com/Patreon. If you aren't familiar with Patreon, it's an easy way for those who are interested in this show to help out by simply pledging a small amount each month in sponsorship. Now that could be as little as $5 a month, which is about £3.80, or as much as you like. You will enable us to dedicate more time creating more content to help you, including videos, more blog posts, and even more shows. So if you can, head over to cynicaldeveloper.com/Patreon and get involved. In this episode, we conclude our mini-series on the Time Bandits. Who are the Time Bandits? They're the thieves in our day-to-day lives that are stealing our time away, stopping us from becoming productive and reaching our targets and goals. This mini-series started back in episode 76 with a look at the ringleader of the bandits, Too Much Work in Progress, or Too Much WIP. If you haven't listened to that episode, then stop right now, go back to 76 and listen to the episodes going from there, because as I said, it is a mini-series and we've focused on the 5 ringleaders, which are Too Much WIP, conflicting priorities, unplanned work, neglected work, and unknown dependencies. And today we're going to be looking at the final ringleader, unknown dependencies. So what are unknown dependencies? They're the reliance on something that slows you down, be that badly written code, badly architected or utilised code, current work that's outside of your control, bottlenecks due to requirements or need for specialisation of skills that your current team might not have, reliances on third-party software that's either not documented or has become out of date, there's bugs in it and there's no fix for it just yet. And these are only a few of the examples, but you sort of get the idea. So how do you know when you're dealing with unknown dependencies? And I went over a few examples there. Unknown dependencies are a fact of life as a developer, but there becomes a point when they are more than just a mild irritation and they start to steal away your precious time. You spend hours banging your head against brick walls or waiting for other people and stuff. So some of the indicators of unknown dependencies and that they're getting out of hand are you'll need to coordinate between multiple teams and team members. There's a real high dependency on that coordination and that slows you down. The people that maybe you need to work with, they're just not available. A change to one part of your code kills another part of your code, or it generally has unwanted behaviour that you weren't aware of. There's a bug in a third-party library, which I mentioned, but your project is so tightly coupled to it that you can't just rip it out, and a fix won't be available for a long time. An example that I've had in the past with that was the reliance on Telerik's UI tools. It was being used in a project for nothing more than drop-downs to make them look pretty, but there was a bug in it and it didn't work with the latest release of Internet Explorer. And this was several years ago now. The release wasn't going to be out for another couple of months, but we had clients complaining. But my team lead, my boss at the time, wouldn't let me remove it. They just wanted me to fix it. Well, I can't fix it because it's not my code. And tightly coupled code or over-engineered architecture, which leads to you needing more times to fix simple issues or implement a new feature. Something that should maybe take you an hour and you spend days against it. Now, every dependency that you have on any of these things that I've mentioned has the capacity to delay the delivery of whatever it is that you're working on. And that's every single one of these dependencies has that ability to delay your project. So just think about that and how that will quickly mount up. So how should you deal with unknown dependencies? How can you stop them? Unfortunately, you can't stop them. As I've said, they're a fact of life as being a developer. But dependencies become an issue because your work is so tightly coupled to them. So the first port of call when fighting these problems is decouple your system, decouple it away from these dependencies. So let's take a couple of examples of this. So you have a heavy reliance on Bob from Team 2 because he is the only person who understands one section of the system. There aren't any good code tests or aren't any tests at all, and you need to work on something that changes some of the functionality that's in his code. You don't know where else the code is used in your system. You don't know what the expected behavior is, apart from the way that it works in the current part of the system that you're looking at. But what you do know is that your current task needs this piece of code to do X under Y circumstances. So how you fix that is that you go and take Bob's code and you extend it. You extend his class with a new function in a new file. So you don't really touch his code, and however you go and implement this, it doesn't really matter because it's different depending on what technology stack you're using. But in your new method, you should be able to access all the private methods and variables and things like that that was used in the original method. And you can produce the functionality that you need, and it won't affect the rest of the code base at all. It won't affect the rest of the system that has the expected functionality that Bob wrote. Just make sure to tell Bob that you've done this. Make a note to clean this up because this is tech debt and will need to be sorted out later when Bob is available. And maybe his code needs simplifying a little bit. Another example is if you have a dependency on a third-party library and there's a bug in the code, like I explained earlier, you should decouple your project from that third-party library, create a wrapper around it, where you can implement a temporary fix maybe, or even swap out that library in the future if the fix never comes around, or you find a better solution. So a last example that I can give is if there's a lack of skill set in your team to work on the problem, bring in somebody with that skill set. Bring them in to work on that problem, to fix that problem. Get them to maybe train up the current team, which it's not always the best option, but a better idea behind that is get them to work with their current team, to remove that technology, replace it with something that they are able to work with, something they do understand. And other people might suggest that you start using charts and graphs and matrices to work out the dependencies and how complex they are and things like that. But simply writing simpler, more malleable, more manageable code is going to be the best and quickest option at your disposal. And if you think about this stuff as you're setting out to write your own code, whether it's in a brownfield or a greenfield project, it doesn't really matter, but it will help you in the long run. And if your team doesn't know how to fix a problem, then bring in somebody that can bring your team up to speed, or help them move away from it. Find that person that is going to be your little superhero to help defeat this little bandit. And this, sadly, concludes our mini-series on the Time Bandits. Hopefully you have a better understanding of these thieves and how to combat them. If you want to find out more, then do jump onto the website and leave some comments on the episodes, and I will get back to you on them. The Time Bandits, they are a stressful bunch, but if you put the tips from these episodes into action, you will kick them into touch. You will become a better, more measured professional by applying the advice that I'm giving you in this mini-series. You can even apply this stuff to other things in your life. I use these methods to manage my spare time and my other projects as well. It doesn't have to be software development. I've given up on tasks and projects and started saying no to new things because the Time Bandits were there eating away at my life. But with these tips and tricks and these little nuggets of information, I've managed to overcome them and get stuff done. But for now, thank you for listening to The Cynical Developer. I'm James Stoddart, and this was the last in the mini-series of the Time Bandits, and this was Unknown Dependencies. If you have any questions about this or any other episode, then drop us an email, a tweet, or leave a comment on the website where you can find all the resource links, show notes for each episode. And if you enjoy this episode, please leave a review on your favourite podcast platform, iTunes, Stitcher, whatever it is, and help The Cynical Developer to reach more developers around the globe.